All right, I'm here with Adam Tendler, pianist here in Chicago from New York City. Played a concert this weekend, was a guest expert on the Alloy workshop, and also just got finished with a recording session of a new work by me behind the screen here, Shi-An Costello, called Haunted by Comfort, which was written for this recording session, especially for this session. So Adam, how was the experience?
It was really, it was really special. It's always special and really just fills my heart to play with you and to work with you. We have such a history, but to play your music is really special. And this piece in particular, it is a total, I use the word odyssey for it. For one page, it really takes the listener and the pianists on a real kind of journey. And I was just thinking how the piece kind of explores and plays with the idea of memory and sort of origin stories of music and sort of as musicians what we might experience as teenagers of imperfection and kind of fumbling around the instrument but also fumbling around the canon. And this piece in particular is taking John Cage's Sonatas and Interludes as an entry point or a jumping off point, either way, and also music by Debussy, the Arabesque. It's kind of mixing those to me in a similar way that a teenager kind of is just pulling from everywhere and taking inspiration from everywhere. I think it's interesting to do that with a new work because the Sonatas and Interludes for pianists like us, or at least for me, is really right up there in the canon with the other major masterpieces that are sort of the riptide that pull us, and again, speaking for me, pulled me into music, period, let alone contemporary music. But Debussy's like that too. And so to kind of have both of those pieces being presented as part of a musician's subconscious or origin story, I think is really powerful and important because now in the 21st century, that canon and that sort of bedrock of what we think of as classical music is changing. It's evolved already. It's probably even evolved since when we were in our training. And so to sort of acknowledge that, as opposed to like, well, Bach, and Bach is great, but as a kid, you're pulling Bach too, and Chopin, and Rachmaninoff, and all of those things swim around in our heads when, I guess the last thing I'll say is when you're an adult, it's all still swimming back there. And those associations are still real, and they're still foggy, and they're still kind of imperfect. And I like that this piece sort of explores that foggy territory.
Awesome. Well, you played beautifully, and I think you say it better than I can in terms of describing the piece.
I was going to say, but that's how I feel about it, and that's why I think it's a really powerful piece.
I love it. So you are an absolute godsend for the repertoire of American composers in general, and then you have such an amazing just resume, I guess you could call it, on playing John Cage's Sonatas and Interludes and other Cage works and other American experimentalists. Do you have any words of wisdom or thoughts for people who are curious, anything you'd want to share with people who are curious about the Cage Sonatas and Interludes, prepared piano, and even just John Cage and American experimentalism in particular?
I would say to treat it, well, it's a paradox. In one way, I would say treat it as brand new, treat it as yours, treat it as a living kind of document. Sonatas and Interludes, or John Cage's work in general, can feel really contemporary if you allow it to be. It doesn't need to be sort of an artifact of a time. It can feel really, and whenever I play that piece, whenever I play Sonatas and Interludes, people come up and they'll say it's the first time I've ever heard that piece live. And I think, oh my gosh, really? That's true for a lot of classical music though, especially when we live in the field. We can take for granted that, that we hear Claire de Lune all the time and this, that. It's not true for everybody. And when we start to really go into John Cage, that might seem super familiar to a classical musician or a trained conservative musician, but it's not true for everybody. So there's still so much to discover for listeners with Cage's work, especially Cage, because he can be so polarizing and so sort of presented in such a binary way for people, and I think unfairly so. And so there's a lot with Cage to discover. At the same time, also, I just think it's really exciting to do the research and to try to do the work as faithfully as possible. And it doesn't mean Cage is always really clear, but that kind of unraveling of the mystery of his works, whether it's a prepared piano piece that it seems really fixed, but maybe there's mysteries about the preparation, or some of the later works where you're really just parsing his instructions. And there's pieces I've done of his where I take a couple weeks and I think, I'm just reading this instruction set every day until it makes sense to me. And that I love that stuff. It's not for everybody, that process.
Just stare at the text for a while, like Faulkner or something.
Totally. And then the next day, and then I'll say, I have no idea what he's talking about. And then the next day I'll try again. I'm like, okay, I think I know what that means. And at the end of that process, I'll know what it means for me. But I still did that work. It might not even be right, but I just did that work. And so that kind of paradox of making it both kind of faithful to the work and to the process, and to him as a serious composer, at least serious in intention, putting him alongside other artists. I think that's important, but I also think making it new and not just sort of an artifact of a time or a curiosity of a time is also important. It also makes it relevant to people now who just really want to hear it. We did this workshop, and so many people there it was new to them, the idea of preparing a piano, period, and they had so many questions. So I just think also make room for the fact that this is still contemporary. When you activate a piece of music, it's automatically contemporary, so that can kind of spill into all sorts of music that we all play.
Right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Adam.
Cheers.
Have
It
a
was
great
an honor.
Yes, it was an honor to have you here in
thank you so
Chicago,
much.
and to have a part in Alloy too.
Oh my gosh,
So,
thank you for having me, and I can't wait to see the future of Alloy.